last time I really filmed something was in October, and now it's mid-December. So, yeah, it's been a while since I've sat down and talked like this. So, this video is gonna be just all about music and concerts that I went to. The first concert that I'm going to talk about in this video is Bring Me the Horizon and Motionless in White. Motionless in White opened up for Bring Me the Horizon, and I really love both of these bands so much, so it was very exciting for me to see them live. I mentioned that I would be seeing them in a few other videos, but I never got to talk about it after seeing them live, and so I finally get to do that now. The concert was absolutely amazing. I loved it so much, and it was really a full circle moment for me because I started listening to Bring Me the Horizon in 2015 when they released That's the Spirit. It's their album with the umbrella on it. I'll insert a picture here. But that's when I really started listening to this band, and ever since then, I've really loved their music so much, and of course, I've gone back and listened to their older music before that album as well, and I just really love so much of their discography. But I would say my favorite albums by them are That's the Spirit, of course, because that's what got me into them. That album it means a lot to me. So that's definitely on the top for me. And then I also love Suicide Season and Sempiternal. And then I also really enjoyed Post-Human Survival lore. So those are probably my personal favorites, just the ones that I listen to the most. But there's a lot of great songs throughout their whole discography. And if you haven't listened to them, I really recommend you do. I feel like That's the Spirit could be a good gateway for people that maybe don't listen to super heavy music. I feel like that could be a good one for someone who's dabbling into that kind of genre, or just into heavier music in general. I think That's the Spirit album could be a good transition album into that. So I would recommend that one to you if you haven't listened to them before. About the concert itself, it was really good, and I'm so happy that I finally got to see them after listening to them for over a decade. Even though I would have loved to have gone and see them, especially during the That's the Spirit era. That would have been so cool. And yeah, but at the time it just wasn't something I could really do. But now that I'm able to do my own things and, do what I want, I finally get to see and do things that I couldn't before, which is really cool. So because of that, it felt really special to finally see them after so long and just loving their music for over a decade, which is just crazy to think about that it's been that long. It does feel like it was a long time ago, because it was, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. It's just kind of a weird feeling when you think about the concept of time and just. Anyways, I'm not gonna get too deep into that. But yeah, the concert was amazing. to see the older songs because I wasn't able to go to their tours back then. But I don't think they performed any song from the Suicide Season album. I don't think they did any from There Is a Hell, Believe Me, I've Seen It, There Is a Heaven, Let's Keep It a Secret. I don't think they did any songs from that album either, or songs from Count Your Blessings. So pretty much their first 3 albums, I don't think they did any songs off of. But I'm not gonna lie, that made me kind of sad. Like I would have loved probably just one from each of those albums would have been cool. I understand that those albums are pretty old by now. Those first 3 albums were from the late 2000s and early 2010s, so it makes sense that they wouldn't focus on those albums as much. So I definitely understand why I was all the way in the nosebleeds, but it didn't even matter. Like, and it was kind of cool actually, because you could see the whole pit, like the whole general admission area, and it was kind of just fun to look over every once in a while and just see like everyone having fun. I do wish that I could have been on the floor, but tickets are pretty expensive nowadays. So I gotta, save money where I can. And in general, for concerts, I'm just happy to be there regardless, I don't really mind being in the back as much. It's kind of always been that way. I've never really been at the front to many bigger concerts to that scale. When they're in arenas or stadiums, I pretty much tend to go in the back just because I like to save money in that way. And I do remember there was someone dressed as Miku in the crowd. I don't know, that was just funny to me. Because it was just easy to spot from so up high. I could just see Miku walking around. Someone dressed as Miku. I'm not even into Miku that much, but she's an icon. I can admit it. Back to the concert though. Okay, and then Motionless in White was one of the openers at this concert, and I am so happy that I got to see them as well. It was like a 2-in-1 deal for me. It was so fun that I got to see them open for Bring Me the Horizon. It was my first time seeing Motionless in White as well, so it was just a really special concert for me. And I love a lot of Motionless in White's discography as well, and they were amazing live too. Hopefully someday I can see them by themselves on tour someday, because since they were an opening act, their set list wasn't too long. Obviously, I would say that my favorite albums by Motionless in White are Creatures, and then Reincarnate, and Graveyard Shift. Those are my top 3 albums by them, probably. I didn't end up getting any merch at the concert. I feel like recently I just haven't been getting merch from concerts anymore like I used to when I was younger. When I was younger, I used to typically get a t-shirt at majority of the concerts I would go to, kind of just to commemorate the occasion. But now that I think about it, I haven't gotten merch from a concert in a few years, actually. I think that could also be a bit attributed to seriously be in love with the design to justify spending $60 on a t-shirt. And I guess just recently, most of the time, I'm just not into the designs of these concert shirts. I don't know, it's, I guess it's just a few different reasons, but yeah, now that I think about it, I haven't gotten merch from concerts in a while. But anyways, let me get back on topic because I've just been talking about that for a while. The next concert that I went to recently that I'm going to talk about is halsey. And I have something to show while I talk about this. But before I show it, halsey did a tour recently, and it was for the 10-year anniversary of her album called Bad Lands. I started listening to halsey 10 years ago when she released Room 93, which was an EP that was released before the Badlands album. So I've also been listening to her about the same amount of time as Bring Me the Horizon. And it was also my first time ever seeing halsey live too. I've just been experiencing things that I've wanted to for a long time, and it's kind of felt like I time traveled a bit back in time during those concerts. It was just a really cool feeling to finally experience seeing these artists live after a decade. But yeah, so it was also my first time seeing halsey live, and I've been listening to her for over a decade. However, I mainly was just into Room 93 and Badlands from her, and like a few songs from the album after Badlands. But personally, that's all I really fully got into. When I heard she was touring for the 10-year anniversary of Badlands, I knew I had to go because it just made the most sense for me, because that's what I knew her from and what I know of her the most, and what I'm most familiar with. The Badlands album was really special to me as well back then when it was released. There's just so much I could talk about for that time period. It was the period of Tumblr, and it was just a very interesting moment in pop culture for me, because it was when I was really discovering my own music taste for the first time, really. Around that time is when I really started diving into music fully and exploring music on my own, compared to when I was much younger, when I would listen to what my parents played in the car or what was on the radio. But once I got Spotify and I could really just discover music on my own, it was just a huge turning point for music and how much it meant to me in my life. So I really look fondly back on that time era, about 2014. So Badlands is from around that time when I really started to discover music on my own, really, for the first time, and kind of create my own identity away from my family and just be more individual probably 2 weeks before the concert, so it was just like really cool to find. And I could finally have this in my possession after a decade. So yeah, this is what the cover looks like. This cover is very iconic, in my opinion. At least like for that time period, for 2015. Just looking at this cover takes me back. Badlands track list, and it has all the songs on it. This is really an amazing album for a debut. When you look at the track list, you just see how stacked it really is, and just how special this album was for its time. So my favorite songs from this album are Hold Me Down, New Americana, Drive. I'm about to start listing the whole track list. Seriously, I'm reading this track list and it's hard to choose. Colors. I mean, come on. That was a Tumblr staple. The lyrics on the bridge was just everywhere on Tumblr. So I would say Colors has to be in the top 3 just because of how iconic it is for that. And just for the culture. For the Tumblr culture. It has to be in top 3. And then I love Coming Down. I feel like that one's really underrated, but it's one of my favorites. And then Haunting as well. I feel like that run of Colors, Coming Down, and Haunting, honestly, that might be my top 3, actually. But Hold Me Down, New Americana, Drive, Roman Holiday, Control, Young God, Ghost, Castle. And then this is the inside. The CD is just a light pink. It's kind of hard to see in the camera, but it just says Halsey Badlands in white. Let me just look at the booklet. Alright, so it's just the one page. Again, it's gonna be hard to see in this camera, but that's the cover that I showed earlier. And then you open it up and it says Badlands. She wrote a thank you note. She said, "Thank you to all the people who helped make this record possible and kept me sane through what was a whirlwind of creative therapy." I think that's an amazing way to explain the theme and the concept of this album. Let me talk a bit about the concert itself. It was a really cool experience because for this tour she did small venues, so it would sort of emulate how the original Badlands tour was back then. And like I mentioned before, this was my first time seeing her live, so I sadly didn't get to see the original Badlands tour. I'm happy that I was able to see her in such a small venue compared to what she probably does more nowadays, which is like an arena probably. And actually, I almost didn't get a ticket because I signed up for the pre-sale and I was probably about 1,500 in the queue. So there was 1,500 people in front of me and I was waiting until it was my turn to buy a ticket. And by the time that I was into Ticketmaster and I could purchase a ticket myself, it was not showing any more tickets. So it was seeming like it already sold out, which kind of makes sense because, you know, it's a small venue, and if those 1,500 people in front of me were buying multiple tickets, then it would sold out, and that's it, and not tried or been patient, I wouldn't have gotten a ticket. So I was very lucky in that way that I just kept trying and it worked out in the end. I assume that someone was probably checking out because once you select a ticket and you go to fill out all your details and stuff, so you have 7 or 8 minutes to complete the purchase and make sure that the purchase goes through to secure the ticket. So if you don't, complete the purchase within that time, the ticket is up for grabs again for anyone. I guess that's how I was able to get mine. So yeah, I was really lucky in that way because since she's such a big artist, she was in high demand, especially for being in such a small venue. It was pretty hard to get a ticket, so I'm very grateful that I was able to see her at the store since it meant so much to me, the Badlands album specifically. So the last concert I am going to talk about that I saw this year is erykah Badu. This concert was an interesting experience. I personally was not aware that she tends to show up late to the concert. She came on stage about 2 hours after the show was supposed to start, or at least what the ticket said the time would start at. I was just sitting there for about 2 hours before, and I went by myself. I pretty much always go to concerts by myself nowadays. Since she came out 2 hours late and I was just sitting there for 2 hours, it was pretty boring. That's probably the only moment that I've regretted going to a concert by myself because I've never been to a concert where an artist has been that late, where I've had to wait that long. Yeah, it was just not fun. I mean, it is what it is, It's in the past, so I'm just not really hung up on it, but I try to just not get upset or, take things too serious. I wasn't aware, apparently, that's common for her, so I had no idea to even be showing up later, because actually a lot of people in the audience were showing up at least an hour after the show was supposed to start, so other people seemed to know that she starts late, but I didn't know that since it was my first time seeing her. But other than it starting late, the concert itself was really great. She's an amazing performer. I'm glad that I saw her. Despite the being late, it was still a very good concert, and I'm glad that I've seen her at least once in my life. So, it was a tour celebrating the 25th anniversary of her second album called Mama's Gun. So it was a celebration of that album. She mainly performed the songs from that album, obviously, and just a few others. But I also found one of her albums at the same secondhand bookstore that I found the Halsey album at. So this is her Worldwide Underground album. I found this for $4.99. even though I love that album a lot, I would probably recommend, if you haven't listened to her before, I'd recommend you listen to her first album called Baduism. It's just an absolute classic. Those are a few concerts that I experienced within the last 6 months. This year really just felt like me finally getting to see artists live that I've loved for a while. Yeah, this was just a pretty chill video of me mainly just chatting. I realized I didn't even tap on anything. I just showed